I'm going to turn this over to Charlie, who's going to introduce our guests, and then we're going to hear what's going on in Singapore.
Sure. So thank you, John, and welcome everybody. I thought it might be fun. I'm the chair of the External Relations Committee of the board, so I'm responsible for sort of networking and relationships. And we've had a very strong international emphasis in the last few years. And I also was lucky enough last year to go to Singapore, and so I have direct connections with these wonderful people. And I thought, after I'd had a discussion with Greg Chen, who I'm about to introduce a few weeks ago, I thought it would be really interesting to find out a perspective from the other side of the world in terms of running a choruses like Gala choruses, and particularly COVID, the pandemic's one thing we're going to discuss. And Greg had some really interesting things to say, I thought. So I'm going to introduce two people to you now. I don't know where they are in relation to, but somewhere on your screen will be Greg Chen. Can you wave, Greg, so we know? Yeah. It's 6 a.m. for Greg, and Greg, I believe, is the conductor of Sing Men's Chorus, previously the Singapore Men's Chorus. Thank you so much for joining us. And his colleague Royston is also here. Can you give us a wave too?
Hi, hello.
Hello. And they have both got up ridiculously early just to share some insights. What we're going to do is we're going to talk for about 40 minutes, the three of us, and then we're going to, in the last 20 minutes, have questions, or it's probably going to be 35 now because we started a bit late. So hold your questions and put them in the chat, and then we'll come round to that. But I thought it would be interesting to give them a chance to, and they've given me a list of topics to talk about, and we've sort of negotiated this a little bit. But it's free and easy conversation. I'm just going to ask a question, and you guys, off you go. Does that work for you both? Nod if you can hear me, Greg. Good, yeah. Great. So, so the first thing we thought we'd talk about was like the pandemic. I was going to say the elephant in the room. It's the pandemic in the room. How's that affected you both, and the way your chorus works, and how have you sort of survived and thrived in spite of it all?
I think the one thing that made it really, really difficult was the fragmentation that resulted from it. Yeah. They call it social distancing. I think there's nothing social about it. But also it eats away at the very, very heart of what defines a choir. You come together to sing. Yeah. So while there is some work that's possible remotely, I think that this isolationist constraints really, really take its toll on groups. Yeah. Rayston, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think what was difficult for us, especially last year when it all started, it hit us pretty fast because we had a very great year planned out ahead of us. We were collaborating with G Major, another chorus in Taiwan, right? So we were planning to actually have our concert here and then have another version of our concert in Taiwan in collaboration with them, and they would be coming over to join us as well. But sometime in March and April, it became quite evident that that wasn't going to happen. And eventually when it came to April, plans just had to go. We were all just distant from one another. And yeah, we had to start to learn new ways of making music, which we had never heard of before.
Greg, talk to us a bit about those ways. Talk to us a bit about what you did.
Okay. Greg, you go first.
Okay. So we were actually grappling at straws as to how we can go about things. One of the things we had hoped might happen is that if the disease came under control, that perhaps we could return to developing a reduced concert, for example. So with whatever remaining time that was. We actually attempted to do some sort of rehearsal and to learn things separately. We realized that there were problems with the feedback cycle. Yeah, it's very, very easy to hand down knowledge, but when you come to a practical skill, there needs to be some kind of guidance that requires a much closer proximity. Yeah. Um, Also, at the same time, I think that trying to get everybody to come together, to sing together, to work on synchronicity, on a sense of ensemble, that's very difficult to achieve. So that kind of unity, I mean, I'm not even talking about, feeling like you're together in a group. I'm talking about just making the music as a group. That was such a challenge, yeah. And technology currently doesn't quite allow us to do it. Yeah.
So talk us through, like, you're talking about organizing live on-site rehearsals in January, right? Have you restarted?
Yes, we have.
And,
And it took quite
and
a,
what was that
yeah.
like? I mean, yeah.
Well, we had to deal with the fact that we had a really amazing crop of singers last year, whom half of whom we lost. We had a record
50%.
47.
You lost half. Just
Yes.
wow.
Yeah. And so, with whatever we were left with, we had to think carefully about how we were going to raise membership. One of those things that we had to consider was how many we could put into a room, what kind of distance we need to put in between them, and how many can be unmasked, because there are rules now about how many singers you can have unmasked during rehearsal, as well as in live on-site performances. Take, for example, if you were to rent a dedicated concert venue, you would be allowed only up to 30 people, cast and crew, on stage and backstage. Only 10 of those can be on stage, and they can be unmasked, up to 10 people unmasked. In the audience, no matter how large your hall is, you are only allowed 250 people maximum in zones of 50 per group. Yeah. So that immediately puts, we are entirely self-financed and self-operated. So that really puts a lot of pressure on things like revenue. Yeah, it just becomes not very viable to do a live concert. But when you think about the cost of live streaming and the kind of experience that your audience is going to get, and you think about how much they have to pay to watch you, Singapore has a very, very small population, and the culture of music making isn't that strong. Yeah, we only have 5 million plus on the island, compared to say 330 million in the US. It's a different size of the market. Yeah. Lots of things we had to consider. And then, of course, there were other rules that were put there by the arts venues, how many people you could have in a room, how long you could be there, in between rehearsals, how much time do they need to wipe things down and sanitize, uh, whether you could mix groups, things like that also had to be considered in the way we carved out the year. I have actually prepared a little PowerPoint presentation to run you through that. Perhaps I should let Rayston weigh in as well.
Sure.
Okay, John posted a question in the chat.
Mm.
Are in-person rehearsals indoors or outdoors? This would be indoors, definitely, because Singapore is warm, it's hot. Rehearsing outdoors, it's unimaginable.
Yeah. In the first half an hour, everybody will be going sharp, and in the following minutes, they'll all be going flat. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, this in-person rehearsals mostly, yeah, we need resumed this year. But what we still did last year to engage our members was to embark on a virtual choir project. Yeah, because we did the learning remotely, and only towards the end of that project did we attempt to meet in person to get some semblance of an ensemble and section sound. And then that was when we went into a recording studio and we recorded everyone individually. right? So that was our Why We Sing music project. Not too sure if you've heard it. We can share the link later as well again, right? Need to find it.
So just to be clear, that
Yeah.
you recorded everyone in a recording studio. You didn't ask them to record at home.
No,
You
but
didn't
one of
come
the
in one by
reasons
one.
Yes.
we needed to find something that would be a little bit more long lasting and give us a bit more mileage. So we decided it's going to be a year of deficit anyway, just spend the money. And in return, what we do is we appoint a tech team. And this tech team will be appended to our productions function. So when we were recording, they would scout around, find out what sort of hardware and software we could possibly use, what sort of benchmarks they use in a recording studio, and try and replicate that as best as we could with whatever is commercially available and feasible for us to buy and maintain. Yeah. So yeah, developing the benchmarks was really, really important. Yeah.
Tell us about your benchmarks.
Oh,
What were they?
okay. A reasonable mic cables, interconnects. You need a working laptop with sufficient memory, and you need to have certain. You need a constant venue. Yeah, the acoustics. We had thought about recording people in sections, but we found out in the end that when you have sections and you've got safe distancing rules, once we've got one person, you're right up to the mic, noise to signal ratio is very good. But once you have one more person in there, you've got to be distanced, and then the noise to signal ratio just goes whack. So, but this whole thing, despite it's being time consuming, is actually worthwhile because you reduce a lot of the post-production work. Yeah, I think it's unfair to put it all to these engineers. I really pity whoever does Eric Whitaker's huge choirs. It's tough going, and your ears just fall off at the end. Yeah. So yeah, those are quite a number of considerations, and we have a tech team who will pass on the knowledge. We intend, for example, this year to release 3 music videos, and each one will use a different tech team so that everybody gets some kind of relief. Yeah.
Wow, I'm going to press on. I know you've got your PowerPoint presentation, but I want to get through the
No,
bullet points if I can.
carry on, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Socially distanced choreography was a topic that I love the idea of. Tell us about what that meant for you when you were working. How did you do that?
Okay, we haven't actually done it yet. It's still something we're exploring. The reason, of course, is that we are still hoping for a live on-site performance. That is the most efficient thing to do. When you think about having to record and re-record, doing both the audio tracks and the video footage separately, that's very, very inefficient. And when you're doing it alone and you have to separate everybody, I think that the confidence of the group, the energy also gets dissipated. So in this time and age, what we're hoping to do is to be able to work out choreography that can be, that doesn't require people to come into contact with one another, that can be distanced. You can still have a variety of blocking patterns, but which visually on stage can be transformed so that in the event that we do have a relaxing of the restrictions, that we can still move from the digital format over to a live format. Yeah, we haven't got our act together quite yet. We're still in discussion, but we have a number of different people. One of those people I'm going to try out is actually in the aerobics industry. And they would have all the know-how and all the knowledge of the restrictions. So we're trying to work things out to see whether this can be done and whether it will look visually inviting, whether it's presented on video or whether it is presented on stage.
So essentially, it's trying to find a way to be artistic. Am I right? Artistically,
Yes.
have artistic integrity, but also socially distanced on stage at the same time, which I think is a very which is a very cool concept. I wanted to talk that you said something else that was really interesting, and I'd love to explore with you when we were chatting before. And it's this idea of pandemic proofing your choir. That's to say, you had this idea that this is not it, right? That there's going to be another pandemic in 5 or 10 years' time. That there are things you can do both artistically and organizationally to think about how to keep your organization safe as a whole while you're during all that. Talk to us about what please no, not again. Jane's just written in the chat. No, I agree, but I just thought this was a really interesting and slightly dark topic to explore. Sorry to interrupt. You go ahead.
Rayston, you want to start us off?
Okay, sure. Okay, pandemic proofing, many aspects to look at. I think the first would be the members. How do we keep them engaged while we are still distanced, right? In the event that we cannot actually meet, some form of remote learning still has to go on, right? So that was a period where we were exploring last year, sometime in May and June, right? So rehearsals and sectionals, no, not rehearsals, sectionals took on the learning went online. So literally it's over Zoom. The section leader and the rest of the section will be teaching a piece, right? So for instance, what I do would be to share my screen of the score. And then as I am singing and teaching, I will get the members to sing back one by one. So it's not possible, definitely, to have a section sound, right? Because of latency issues, there will be lags here and there. But what was good was that it actually allowed us the opportunity to hear individual members for the first time. It was quite surprising. I saw it as a blessing in disguise, right? Because usually we just hear the whole section singing. So weaker members who you know, they can't follow along, they sometimes get left behind, right? Or they just hide and then just let the stronger singers come out to support them. But now everyone has the opportunity to actually level up, right? Which gave us then the opportunity to check in individually and offer support for the weaker members. And a second thing beyond that was therefore to Greg actually mentioned earlier was the process of feedback, right? Well, it is easy to teach and deploy because I'm an educator at heart. Greg is also an educator. We know the greatest inequality in teaching is that teaching doesn't equal to learning. So while we can teach all we want, sometimes the learning just doesn't happen, right? So there's this constant feedback loop that we have to check in on the members, right? So it's really getting them equipped on how to even do a basic home recording, not for the use in the music video or for the project, but really just to hear how they even sound themselves. And most people just get freaked out the first time hearing themselves because we know, you know, do the bone conduction and everything. How I sound right now is even different from how everyone hears me. Right? It's really getting them used to singing on their own, hearing themselves, and then sharing these recordings with us, the section leaders, so that we can, you know, listen. It's like, okay, this part is not quite right. Rhythm, pronunciation, timing, intonation, the whole shebang, everything. But of course, they have to be on board with us, right? So unfortunately, because some people just couldn't deal with, for lack of better words, the stress of it all, right? Having to sing remotely, having to sing online, because we join a choir to be social, right? We're going to sing with people. So having to shift everything 180 degrees entirely just wasn't it for some people. And they said that they would join us again when the pandemic's over, when they could sing in person with us, right?
I think there's
Um,
something very frightening about being
okay, that was the
singled
first aspect.
out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to leave a
Yes,
little
yes. Actually,
thing
yeah. Sometimes
in the
just
chat.
hearing.
So one of the things that we realized is that we are still have to keep the group together, whether musically or not. And in terms of recruitment, in the audition process, and how we manage the membership, that's kind of important. The thing about being 17 years old now, this chorus, is that we have a dichotomy because you've got young members being recruited. We went on that thing 5 years ago, and we managed to reduce the average age from 40 years old to nearly 30 years old. That was quite an achievement itself for 2 years' work. Now, I'm finding that we have to make room for the older members because we now have a graying population, people with aches and pains and heart problems, joint problems. So you're talking to, I'm one of them. So we have to look for repertoire and presentation modes that will also cater to them. So this whole thing about being inclusive, not leaving anyone behind, that's kind of like one of the big themes going ahead. We actually have a 5-year plan that's not been properly worked out yet, but we are looking at that quite seriously now.
Can I just return very quickly to this idea of protecting yourselves for the future? Are there other either aspects, financial or artistic aspects, that you feel that you're thinking about?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
that
so the artistic aspect would be to, so the artistic aspect would be to develop capabilities to do our own in-house recordings, right? Because it is not financially feasible to keep paying a recording studio to do it for us. So that was why we decided we would just invest the money last year, learn it properly, and then figure out how it's all going to be done in-house. I think we did embark on a project on our own entirely free of a recording studio, and we have a respectable Christmas work, a bit fun tune, that we put up as well.
Yeah. Talk to us a bit about audience and how that's been for you, and whether your audience has grown, whether it's shrunk, where you get it from these days, how that's changed for you.
I don't know. Frankly, it's a bit hard to gauge that. The news is that the uptick online has suddenly exploded. We usually garner in about about 1,000 views for a video. In, I don't know, maybe 5 of our pieces from the past 10 years have garnered that over 5 years. This time we managed to garner nearly 2,000 views in just a month. Yeah. I do not know what that means. And for it to mean anything, it's got to be sustained. So I'm hoping that the content and our frequency will do something for us for the time being. We are also reaching out to other choirs. We have made some wonderful friends. This choir did not go on tour in its first decade. So I was really, really happy when in its 11th year, they managed to be persuaded to go and take part in a foreign festival. So we all took our own leave and spent our own money, and we went over to Taipei, where we met G Major. Yeah, that was the beginning of a few other things. We've since made friends also with other choirs. Yeah.
What would you say have been the best
I
things
think
about?
to add on,
Go ahead.
let me just add on very quickly in terms of audience base. I think there's a change in demographics as well. Because normally when we talk about audience coming to a concert, it will be the immediate people within your circles, right? People whom you know, your friends, your families, close people whom you can actually invite physically down to the concert, right? But having gone online, it also gave us the opportunity to share our music with people whom we normally wouldn't have been able to share the music with. So that's a plus point, definitely. But our current mode of delivery is really just to put the video online and just share the link, right? And see whoever sees it and comes on whenever, whenever they can come on. As to monetizing it, right? If we talk about sustainability, monetizing it, we haven't quite thought of a model yet. There are some models that we're exploring, right? Would be to host it on a platform. People pay a certain fee for an e-ticket. They can go on and watch us for that set duration. Or another method would be to same thing, likewise, to host it, but to receive money in the form of donations. So I sing with another choir as well. In December, we did have an Advent concert, although it was a shortened one, down to 3 songs. We adopted the approach of having donations. And I must say that, yes, while there are still donations coming in, it's definitely way less than what we normally get in a normal year where we just get tickets and donations. Yeah, so the money stream does suffer, but we have to find ways to get around it, be creative, and still find ways to get people to support us.
What's your hunch about live audience when you come back? Do you tell us about your live audience now, before the pandemic, and do you think it will have changed when you come back? What's your hunch tell you?
I really can't tell. The attrition rate, the turnover rate for this choir on a yearly basis is anything between 20% and 50%. So in the worst of years, in 2 or 3 years, you could have a totally new membership, for example. That makes it kind of unpredictable, given the way in which this pandemic is wearing itself out in waves.
How big's your audience when you before the pandemic? Because when I went to see one of your shows and I was like, this is huge.
We only did one night, so you really have to pack them in. There was a time when we would do 2 concert nights because it really is a lot of work just to do one show. I think I'm hoping that when we go back on, that we would not only have garnered a new audience by then, through our online work, but also that there'll be some anticipation from our more loyal supporters, and hopefully we can put in a double concert night. I do not know. We'll see how things go. One more thing, because we are a male chorus, we are also looking at ways in which we can support a boys' choir, a school boys' choir. I have a friend who works as an instructor in a boys' school in Singapore. And we're looking at, for example, Zooming our rehearsal directly to them so that they can observe other men at work and to understand, perhaps, that it is actually a good thing for men to sing together.
Sounds very exciting. We've got sort of 5 minutes of formal chat to go before we open it up to questions. Just some tips, people who, we're all in the same boat across the world. What would you say if you'd like 2 to 3 things that we should take away from today that have been really, really helpful for you?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't quite.
Yeah,
sorry,
just 2 or 3 quick tips, things that you have learned along the way that would help us as advice to pass on to US chorus directors? Just things that you did, even if they're funny or just little things that would help us.
Okay. If you intend to record people individually like we did, it might help to have a rehearsal recording. I underestimated how debilitating it could be for some people. One of our stalwart older members actually froze in the studio. He couldn't, his voice became shaky, his breathing became shallow, and yet on stage he was a live wire. That totally threw me a curveball. And as director, I was so humbled that he would actually stay there as long as I wanted him to. I did, of course, release him after 15 or 20 minutes because the pain of watching him having to deal with that was just too much. I was telling myself, do I just spend the money and get him in on another day, or do I just, toe the line and let this be it? And I said, no, we have to spend the money. I can't force him to do this. Yeah, it's just too cruel. Yeah, a rehearsal recording could put some of them at ease. Yeah. So what we actually did was we actually set up the same kind of setup in a slightly different venue, but we underwent the exact same process. So they would come in, they would rehearse, they would go for a take, I would review it with them, and then they go for another take or two. We actually rehearsed this process with each and every singer before we actually went into the studio. Yeah. I don't know what else I can offer, because I think that the choirs elsewhere in the world are doing so well, and they are churning out such wonderful material. It's all very inspiring. Thank you. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, Greg and Rayson, for that. Wow, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not sure that I feel we're necessarily doing particularly well. It's a struggle for all of us, right?
Yeah. Oh yes. Wear masks. Stay safe. Protect every single member. I think that that's really important. We have to commit to them as leaders. Yeah.
So we said we'd move into Q&A about now, to keep this to an hour-long session. I've got one question in the chat. Well, this number of people, should we try just opening it up and everyone just speaking so it feels different? Let's do that. So everyone just unmute, and be respectful of each other. I'm sure we will. And then I think it'll just make it a different convivial atmosphere. So I'm going to shut up. John, you had a question to start us off, which is in the chat right now.
Well, you all are quite a ways ahead of us on the curve, because we can't have indoor performances, we can't have indoor rehearsals, we can't do any of that, and it's really very, very dicey, and it varies by state. So I'm wondering about how your singers felt about coming back. Maybe the situation in Singapore has been different. It's been really up and down here. Not a national coordinated effort. It's been very hodgepodge. And so some states were more successful than others, but overall the country right now, the US is in, as a friend of mine says, deep Snickers. And it's, so when I mention to singers, well, what about coming back? Right now they go, that isn't happening. So I'm wondering how your singers' attitudes are about that, and what really the situation was that they were coming out of.
All of us were hungry to come back. I think that we can't wait for when we can sing entirely unmasked, for example. The situation is not the most fulfilling at the moment, but it's the best we can achieve. I think that having leadership, sending out consistent messages is really important. Singapore has succeeded to this extent only because the leadership has been very consistent in its messages. We may be a bit slow on the uptake in some cases, but once we have made a decision, everybody toes the line. In some ways, the population and the culture that we have here, very law abiding, very punishment fearing, that's all a great help. It really, really helps in a situation like this. I do not know that it can be the same in the developed Western countries, but I'm sure that some wisdom will come out of all this. Yeah.
Well, you said you'd lost
Yeah, so there's a
50% of the
Chinese
singers.
saying.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, so there's a Chinese saying now, we're all scared of death. So
Of course.
we do our social responsibility to mask up, stay distance, and then once we saw the numbers coming down, right, I think it gave people the assurance that actually, yeah, there's pretty much, close to zero community cases. The numbers that are still increasing are actually from the returning Singaporeans, right? People who are coming back to work, and they have already been isolated already. So in terms of really a community spread, it is a very unlikely scenario. And I think that gave people the reassurance that it was okay to come back to sing in person. I think that would be for the majority, 95% of people. Of course, we still have that one or two who are still scared of death. So they just still not appear, even though they say they want to sing, but we haven't actually seen them yet. Yeah.
You said you
I
lost.
think it's really a shift in the mindset and attitudes. Yeah.
You said you lost half your choir. I don't know, and you also said your annual churn, somewhere between 20 and 50%, which feels like a lot. But um, did you lose 50% because they were afraid to come back singing, or just because they found something else to do with their time?
Yes, in fact, it happened during the lockdown. We could see a gradual attrition. We had 47 at the beginning of last year. By June, we were down to 37 when we did our project for Why We Sing. And then by the end of the year, we were down to just 21. Yeah. I think that people lost that engagement, and it's so hard to engage remotely. We were so I don't know, we were all clutching at straws. The leadership over here was just trying all sorts, but not wanting at the same time to seem haphazard in our efforts. So everything had to be considered and to be rolled out properly. Yeah. Yeah, we lost them probably because of the lack of engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's also the messaging, right, and direction, and the buy-in, right, that the arts are essential, whether it's visual or whether it's performing arts, right, they are essential, and that the awareness that this pandemic will pass, and we have to make a very conscious personal effort, right, to keep at it if that is something that we value, right? So therefore, I mean, for me, it's very personal that I try to engage in as many of these virtual choir projects as much as I can. I've contributed to a few of them overseas as well, right? One in Italy, another one in, what do we recall, was it? I think it was Hong Kong or Taiwan, I can't remember. It was quite a while back, yeah. And I just do as many of them as I can to just contribute my voice. I think that's the least I can do, right? It's right. Therefore, from members, right, it's the messaging that we send to them that, we have to just keep moving forward together. Of course, there are those who do not get the buy-in, and that's where we naturally lose them. But we are here for you again when you're ready to come back to us. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Questions from everybody else? Anyone got anything burning? Don't be shy.
Well, while everybody else is thinking, do you all are other performing arts organizations also performing live indoors now for live audiences?
There is there's a pilot scheme now to put arts back into the concert, into the venues. Yeah. And among the things that has happened, the government has provided an 80% subsidy for rental of performance and rehearsal spaces. Yeah. That has been great news. Yeah, but it unfortunately will only last until the 31st of March. Yes. Um, yeah. Interestingly enough, we all feel safe rehearsing indoors. I just thought that if we were to rehearse outdoors, that might actually alarm the passing public. Yeah. I don't know. I think that they want to keep this indoors for a reason. I think that the Singapore psyche works slightly differently. We do not want to cause panic. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Hey, I wasn't if I missed this or not, but how many singers do you have coming to rehearsals now?
Okay, we have 30. Yeah, we're trying to keep membership to the maximum size that the rehearsal venue will allow. Yeah.
And so,
And
and then you sing indoors with masks and spread apart.
that's right. Yeah. Uh, we have to try and arrange people so that they can still hear the other sounds. That whole thing about singing hard but listening harder, that's kind of important in our training. Um, and the idea that we should dance with our music, we should dance with our partners when we make our music. That's really really important idea as well. Um, we are now building a concert. It used to be that we would build our concert upon the entire chorus, where 80% of the works are done by the entire chorus. And for relief, we have ensembles. This year, we have to do it the other way around. So 2/3 of our works are done by ensembles, yeah, and the remaining 1/3 will be whole chorus works. In fact, if we do have a live performance, it is very, very likely that we can't put the entire choir on stage. One of the things we are going to do is we are going to pre-record the whole chorus works and then uh, project the video and the sound as relief in between live items. Yeah.
Very creative.
I like that idea.
I think that's the only thing that's going to work, well, at least for us for the time being. Yeah.
Have you been creating ensembles then to manage, to take up the rest of the slack? Because unless you had 6 ensembles or something.
We have a we have a plan. We only have 2 ensembles. One ensemble will work more independently. Maybe I can show you the PowerPoint. Is it okay if I could share
Yeah.
the screen?
Yes, you've got permission.
Thank you. So this is the plan so far for 2021. It's going to be a very, very mixed bridging year until we actually arrive at a proper normal. So pre-pandemic, those were the numbers you can see. Those were the facts. We have had to reduce our repertoire size, our repertoire type as well. So now it's going to be accompanied, and we're going to find ourselves using more audio tracks, pre-recorded accompaniment. Presentation modes are going to be different, and the development of skill is also going to be extremely different. One of the things we're looking at is differentiated learning, both in terms of content and skill, for Ensemble A, which is a smaller, slightly more able ensemble. And the larger ensemble will have to undergo a different kind of training scheme. We worked out that the whole chorus, we had to crunch the numbers. So this is what it looks like for the whole chorus. We distribute the scores in week 0. We spent 2 weeks studying, doing the theory and the director's notes. We spend 3 weeks putting it together on site, and then we become recording ready in week 6. So based upon that, you will see that there is a grid at the bottom with the arrows. Each arrow represents one song. So if we overlap them, we might be able to complete 3 songs in 14 weeks. In cycle 2, we split the ensembles. The more able ensemble does it in 15 weeks with the option to extend with 1 more song. And ensemble B does the same cycle, but with fewer songs. They take 7 weeks instead of 5 weeks. We bring the whole chorus together in the last cycle when we put all the pieces together. The wonderful thing about bringing them all together is they're able to perform for each other. They'll be working in isolation during the second cycle. So now they can showcase their work to each other. I think it'll be very, very exciting for the group. I hope that it engages them. It gives them something to look forward to. So this is our repertoire and this is how it looks. We're also putting together music videos. The ends and the means kind of justify themselves. And we also tell the members what they can expect. I hope that helps.
Would you mind actually sharing your deck with us, your PowerPoint deck?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I thought that was useful.
Okay. Sorry.
Especially the part about telling singers what they can expect, because I sometimes forget that step, right? I just like, come on, people, you ought to know what's going on. Like, oh, we have to practice on our own since we're in a virtual world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the important thing is not everyone is capable of rehearsing on their own, right? We have members who come in, they can sing, they can hold a tune, but you give them a score and it still makes no sense, right? So that's also having to develop musical capabilities from the bottom. Because for the experienced singers who have been us for years, yeah, they can read a score, they can figure out what it means, they can plonk them on the keyboard on their own, they can read solfege to a certain extent. But for new members who come to us, it's always a constant struggle to, level them up, and teach them all the basics, all the basic music theory as fast as we can. And it's the idea of therefore having differentiated learning as well, right? So that those who need the time to learn the theory, right? We have a support system for them. While those who already know all this stuff, we still need to keep them engaged at the same time. And how then do we, get them to come to the same level? Would be to a model that we're exploring also would be have like a buddy system, right? So those who are more experienced, you find a newer buddy to pair up, right? And then to help, him with the music learning, right? To offer your wise wisdom since you've been singing for X number of years more than newer member. Yeah, really getting everyone to come to this common equilibrium point.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that that we've all noticed, I'm sure, that these virtual rehearsals are exhausting. That mentally you just can't do them for very long. Has anybody been experimenting with, instead of doing 1 hour and a half rehearsal, the last 30 minutes of which are useless, to doing 2 rehearsals a week of 1 hour? I've not heard of anybody doing
Haven't
that, but
tried that.
you did?
Yeah. Yeah. So I also came to the realization, myself as a section leader, I came to the realization that if I'm going to sit here on the screen and running through individual members one by one, squares after squares, it's going to be very tiring for the others who have to just sit there and listen to, let's say, in a section of 8, I have to sit there and listen to the other 7 sing before it comes to my turn. Right. So what I actually did was to pre-record the teaching aspects of it all, right? So I would be running through the music, I'll be running through the score, talking about the musical elements, the phrasing, the notes, the timing, everything, right? With hopes that they actually go and learn it on their own first. It's okay if they haven't gotten everything, right? So that's what the sessions would be for. When we come online, that would be for you to clarify your doubts, for you to now sing, right? And get the feedback from each other, rather than for me to sit here, tap, and then sing along, and then come, you repeat, and then, oh no, that is a syncopated rhythm. Come, you cannot sing it on beat. Come, let's do it again. Right, rather than to be banging notes for a good half an hour and 1 hour. So I decentralize the learning, and when we come back, it's ready to get the feedback and check in on the progress of the work.
I think one of the things that we have to be very clear about is whether we want to do things with the entire group or whether we want to work with them individually. Once you decide to work with them individually, the group has to be kept small and the pace has to be kept fast. So every single task, whether it's checking or doing something, has to be very, very quick and short and very, very specific. When you do that, interest and engagement will be kept up. When you do whole chorus work, I think the key to it is to vary the kind of interaction and platforms that you use. One of the things that we have resorted to, for example, when I do whole chorus work, when I hand out performance notes, I don't merely do that. For example, I might do some education work. So if we were doing a piece on, say, gospel music, then we might hark back to spirituals. We provide them with some notes to read. We get them YouTube videos to listen to. We might plant a quiz in using a platform like Kahoot, so that they can do that. We can do a poll. So when you vary the interaction patterns, then you stem fatigue. Yeah, yeah. We do actually have 2 sessions a week, one at whole chorus level and one at section level.
How long are your sessions?
The whole chorus session is typically about an hour with an extension for people to do sight reading. And usually about, I don't know, 6 or 7 people will stay back and then they do a sight reading with me. Sections, I leave it up to the section leaders to work out how long they would like to take. Yeah. Yep, it really is a bit of a carte blanche situation. Hello, Randall. Good to see you.
Oh, hi.
Hello from Singapore.
I'm sorry I missed most of the meeting.
That's all right.
Hi, hello.
This has been very helpful, I think. That's the compare and contrast. But basically, I mean, you've got some good ideas. I think I'm going to turn into a sign somewhere. Sing hard, but listen harder. I just really love
Yes,
that.
definitely.
I love that. If I didn't get anything else up today, that I got the some other takeaways. You're all being ahead of the curve, and the culture of Singapore being different than the U.S. We are not a follow the leader kind of people. We are just not. That's not who we are. And that may have some implications for how we come out of the pandemic. What I keep calling the shoulder season between pandemic and not pandemic. Hopefully, there will be a not pandemic one day. So,
yes.
Did anybody have any other questions or comments? We really appreciate your all's getting up at an ungodly hour to join us. and and it's tomorrow. So thank you so very, very much. We really appreciate your time, and this was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, John, and Charles for setting this up on our behalf. I hope that what we have shared is helpful, and I look forward to learning even more from you guys when we do meet again.
Very good. Well, could you add your website and maybe one of your your either your YouTube or Facebook or whatever social media you're using, sort of your primary social media channel? Would you put that in the chat? I think people would like to.
Right. Let me
Yeah,
find it.
Rayston. Yeah, Rayston can do that.
That would be terrific. Thank you so very much.
Hold on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.